And today also we'll begin with the Samadhi empowerment practice. So I shared on WhatsApp the Samadhi empowerment text. So if you have a way to get it so that you have it when we do this practice. But I'm not sure if today we'll actually do the practice. Some teachings is necessary for this practice. Anyway, we'll begin with the opening prayers. So let us say these opening prayers together. So the two bodhicitta recitations, and then taking refuge, and then the four immeasurable minds, and then the offering of mandala. And particularly today, the offering of mandala, you want to think that you are offering this mandala to receive the instructions and the teachings, particularly of the Samadhi empowerment. All mother sentient beings, limitless as the sky, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and all-knowingness. May they experience happiness and be separated from suffering. I will quickly establish them in the state of the most perfect and precious awakening. All mother sentient beings, limitless as the sky, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and all-knowingness. May they experience happiness and be separated from suffering. I will quickly establish them in a state of the most perfect and precious awakening. All mother sentient beings, limitless as the sky, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and all-knowingness. May they experience happiness and be separated from suffering. I will quickly establish them in a state of the most perfect and precious awakening. Thus, until I achieve awakening, I engage in virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. Until death, I engage in virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. From now until this time tomorrow, I engage in virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. In the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, most excellent, I take refuge until awakening is reached. By the merit of generosity and other perfections, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all migratory beings. In the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, most excellent, I take refuge until awakening is reached. By the merit of generosity and other perfections, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all migratory beings. In the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, most excellent, I take refuge until awakening is reached. By the merit of generosity and other perfections, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all migratory beings. May all mother sentient beings, limitless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. May all mother sentient beings, limitless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. May all mother sentient beings, limitless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. This ground sprinkled with scented waters and strewn with flowers, adorned with the supreme mountain, four continents, sun and moon, I hold in mind as a Buddha land and offer it. May all migratory beings experience such a pure land. Om Guru Devardha Kini Ratna Mandala Pratija Soha. So now let's look at the Samadhi empowerment practice. So the title page, it says, the Samadhi empowerment from Gyalpa Rinpoche's uncommon profound teachings. So this is what's known as Zapchu. The Zapchu is one collection, such as the Dzogchen. Dzogchen is the public teachings, and the translations that we're doing, that we're commissioning, is from the Dzogchen. In the Dzogchen, there are these short teachings, short instructions. Some of them are quite long, but mostly rather short. Over 300 titles, actually. So we are only doing a few. It will be a massive project to translate. If ever that project is done, basically, I think you have to contract a couple or 2 or 3 translators and hire them for 2 years, and that's all that they're doing. So what we're attempting, plant the seeds of that happening, and maybe that's already happening in Germany. Like I said, I shared with you guys, there's some I heard that there's some project like that in Germany. But anyway, our little project is progressing along nicely. And so what we are translating is from the Dzogchen. Then Zapchu is this kind of the uncommon profound teachings. And they are historically a little more restricted. Of course, historically, books are not so easy to come by, right? Physical books are rare. So sometimes even in a monastery, several monks have to share one book. Sometimes only the teacher has the book. Everybody else just listens. So historically, these texts were not that, easily available to start with. But between the Dzogchen material and the Zapchu material, Zapchu is a little more restricted. So this Samadhi empowerment comes from the Zapchu collection. So Samadhi empowerment. So a few words about Samadhi empowerment, or actually, I think maybe what we should do first is let's read this together. Yeah? Starting with, so that all mother sentient beings. Let's read this together from beginning to end. So that if this is the first time you're looking at this text, you have a sense of what the content is. I think much of the content would be somewhat familiar to you. So that all mother sentient beings, limitless as the sky, have happiness, be free from suffering, and achieve the state of Buddha, I shall meditate on the yoga of the 4 empowerments. Oneself appears clearly as the yidam, fingers away from the point between one's eyebrows on the lotus, sun, moon, and silk brocade seat is one's root guru, the embodiment of Vajradhara. In the glorious form of Heruka, the Bhagavan, holding Vajra and bell, together with Vajravarahi, who holds a Katri knife and a Kapala, father and mother adorned with bones, jewels, and color silks, legs outstretched and bent, majestically poised with the 9 rasas, with Kalaratri, and Bhairava on the ground, dwelling in magnificent luminosity and brilliance. Then this next section is after the visualization. Then we make the sevenfold puja to the Guru in the form of Heruka, Chakasamvara, and Vajavarahi. Whatever slight virtue I may have gathered through prostrations, offerings, confession, rejoicing, requesting, and beseeching, I now dedicate to complete great awakening. Then, this one-line supplication. Guru, great Vajradhara, please bestow the empowerments upon me. Guru, great Vajradhara, please bestow the empowerments upon me. Guru, great Vajradhara, please bestow the empowerments upon me. From the point between the eyebrows of the father and mother Guru, white light emanates and dissolves between one's eyebrows. Obscurations of body are purified and the supreme base empowerment is obtained. I am the exalted body of the union of all Buddhas, the identity of appearance, emptiness, and the mandala of deities. From the absorption at the place of union of the father and mother Guru, white and red light with the luster of desire dissolves into one's throat. Obscurations of speech are purified and the supreme secret empowerment is obtained. I am the exalted speech of the union of all Buddhas, the identity of sound emptiness and the nature of mantras. From the endless knot of the heart of the father and mother Guru, blue light emanates and dissolves into one's heart. Obscurations of mind are purified, and the supreme third empowerment is obtained. I am the nature of the exalted mind of all Buddhas, realizing freedom from all bonds of arising, abiding, and ceasing. The father and mother Guru melt into lights and rays and dissolve into one's crown, purifying fixations of the three doors. And the fourth empowerment is obtained within the wisdom of sameness of exalted body, speech, and mind of all Buddhas, spontaneously realize the vast and equal essence, abiding in the Mahamudra of uncontrived wisdom. Through this virtue, may I and other migratory beings quickly achieve the glorious Guru. Having become that, may we establish migratory sentient beings, all without exception, in that very same state. So this is the entire practice. Yeah, very brief, not very complex, not very elaborate. But this is also looking at the Tsokchu, Zapchu that I know how to look at. You know, it's quite clear that in this early period, Kyopa Rinpoche's time, in the 12th, 13th century, the practices that were done did not involve voluminous, right, pages and pages of chanting and recitation. But instead, the practice involved very brief kind of visualizations. But even with very detailed visualizations, there's not a lot of recitations to do. So the feeling one gets when reading this early material is that it was not a what I would call liturgically based tradition. A liturgically based tradition refers to a tradition where lots of different texts of usually very long texts that are chanted and recited. Most of the texts that we have actually in the West, even if you think it's long, it's actually very short by Tibetan standards. But this early material from Gyalpa Rinpoche is usually even shorter than the short material that we are familiar with. So that's an interesting point to note and to kind of take note and to appreciate that in the early period, there weren't a lot of long recitations to do. Yeah. So first, Samadhi empowerment. First, actually, we need to understand empowerment and the four empowerments particularly. But here quickly, Samadhi empowerment. Samadhi here means meditative concentration. So in other words, what kind of empowerment is this? This is the kind of empowerment where one exclusively uses one's mind. One uses one's mind, one's meditative concentration in order to receive empowerment. So as opposed to vase empowerment, using a vase, a bumpa. This is the more common empowerment, right? Using a vase or a bumpa by relying on external objects. Using vase and bumpa to receive or to give empowerment. Okay? Or using torma. Yeah, these sculptures made of barley flour, but sometimes now even carved from wood or cast from metal, using torma to give and to receive empowerment. And then using various other objects, right, to give and receive empowerment. That's what happens in empowerment rituals, where there is a Vajra master physically present and the Vajra and the disciples physically present. Then even now, interestingly, right, these online experiences, online occasions of empowerment, in some ways, I think you could think of it as a bridge between the in-person empowerment and something like this, Samadhi empowerment. Somewhere in between, you know, we have an interesting category of now virtual or Zoom empowerments or Facebook empowerments. It seems to be a midpoint between, right, the physically present empowerment, both master and disciples in the same physical space, and then Samadhi empowerment completely through the power of one's mind, and then the virtual ones in between. Now, all three, it only works actually if the mind is fully present to participate. So in the end, it's actually a matter of the mind. It's not so much a matter of the body at all. It's a matter of mind. So ultimately, one could be physically present at an empowerment ritual or at 100 empowerment rituals and not really receive any empowerment if the mind is not ready, not prepared, and not willing to receive empowerment, right? So Samadhi empowerment is in that way then the essence of receiving empowerment. Through the power of your mind. And this phrase, through the power of your mind, has different elements going on. One is stable mind. stability mind. So the mind cannot be distracted. If the mind is distracted, then again, very hard to receive empowerment. Then the mind needs to recognize, needs to understand, and then ultimately needs to realize. Realize is our big word, right? But to understand, at least, to recognize, next step. This is my own kind of steps. To recognize what is going on. That is a good first step to have. Good first ingredient to have. If no idea what's going on, if you don't even recognize what's going on, then how are you going to have realization, right? Then to understand, first recognize, then understand, oh, so this means this, oh, this means that. Even if it is intellectually, conceptually, understand. Then, one more step, to experience. Then to realize. So now I've given you 4 steps. Recognize, right? Understand, experience, and then realize. So actually all these have to be there. Yeah. So stable mind, not distracted. Then when the mind is stable and not distracted, it needs to recognize what is going on, understand what is going on, experience what is going on, then realize what's going on. That way we receive empowerment. So Kyoba Rinpoche gives this practice and encourages and says, he says, the previous generations of lineage masters, they all do this Samadhi empowerment. And they do this Samadhi empowerment once a day, 7 times a day, which means, continuously, as much as you can. But don't do as much as you can in a especially at the beginning. Don't do as much as you can in a mechanical way. Again, just chanting. Chant. Don't do that, right? But try to relate to this particular practice as more meditative and contemplative. So we don't need to, there's no ritual, there's no ringing bells, all that. Just meditation. So you can do this anywhere, even without the text, Once you get the basic visualization down, then anywhere. If you happen to go outside or working, or just 5 minutes, to receive the 4 empowerments through Samadhi, through meditative concentration. This Samadhi empowerment practice is not meant as a substitute for those empowerments where you are physically present, or as a substitute for virtual empowerments either. I think some of you have experience in the virtual empowerments. In some ways, you have found it more powerful than empowerments where you're physically present. And some of you noted why. You say, because you're less distracted. You see, not being distracted is an important element in receiving empowerment. So if you are distracted, if you are like, I don't know, I feel kind of self-conscious, I don't know what to do, people are looking at me, or like, I have responsibilities here, I have to do this, I have to do that. So your mind is distracted, right? In those empowerments where people are gathered, then you get there and you're like, I want to avoid this person, but I want to know more about that person, all sorts of distractions are there. It's very hard. But with these virtual empowerments, I mean, granted, you don't, as long as, probably if you don't have your family running around and talking, and walking up and down and making a lot of noise, if you are in a quiet space, then it's you, right? And the Vajra Master on Zoom, then you can experience it differently. That's because your mind is not so distracted. Once the mind is distracted, hard to recognize what's going on. And if it's hard to recognize what's going on, still harder for any understanding to arise. And if there's no understanding arising, how you're going to experience it is a lot trickier. And without experiencing it, to realize it becomes even harder, right? So Samadhi empowerment practice is not meant as a substitute for empowerment rituals where a Vajra master is physically present or even virtually present. But Samadhi empowerment, if we familiarize ourselves, if we habituate ourselves with Samadhi empowerment through stability of mind, through recognition, understanding, experience, realization, then whenever we have the opportunity to receive an empowerment where everyone and everything is physically present, then actually all the blessing substances, the physical presence of the Vajra Master, it would greatly enhance actually your experience. Yeah. So this is not a substitute, but this is to enhance from one perspective. Then from another perspective, this is not just an enhancement, this is also the essence of receiving empowerment. So it's short, it's simple, but it's potentially a very profound practice. So take time, don't rush, take time to take this to heart. Yeah. And so now, let's see, any questions or comments before I talk about empowerment and the 4 empowerments. It's your chance, here. That's why we have Zoom, so that it can be a little interactive. Give me a chance to drink my coffee too, if you ask me questions.
Guru, earlier you mentioned about the particular kind of 4-step on the learning journey. So when you understand, then you experience, right? So in particular in Chinese Buddhism text or the Buddhist teaching text, they use this 3 words of 闻思修.
It's not just in Chinese Buddhism, it's all forms of Buddhism. It's the wisdom that arises from learning, from contemplating, and from practicing. Yes.
So, but it doesn't very emphasize of experiencing, right?
Well, that one falls under the practice, the third of the 3.
Okay.
So I'm just using my own. I'm just using my own further elaboration. Yeah? What Jesper is talking about is there is this 3 modes. Those are 3 modes, 3 ways of taking the Dharma into ourselves. First is to learn. Literally, it says the word is to listen. And this is the part of the historical heritage of Buddhism, being an oral tradition in the early days. So to listen. But that's talking about basically to learn. To learn. First, you have to learn the Dharma, right? So then that will be the equivalent of recognizing and understanding. or my fourth step is just, it's not found in the text, but it doesn't contradict. I'm just trying to, in this context of receiving empowerment, I'm trying to elaborate a little bit. Then the next step in the threefold, three modes of studying, three ways of taking Dharma into us. Second one is called reflecting, or sometimes translated as contemplating or thinking about it. So to then, second step here in this case has more to do with kind of intellectually, right? Conceptually engage the material. So it says, okay, Buddha says that no self whatsoever can be found anywhere. So you learn that from the first step, right? You learn that. Then you also learn, oh, self means this and doesn't mean that, right? When the Buddha says no self whatsoever can be found in anything whatsoever. So first step, you learn about that. Then you also learn about, well, Buddha's definition of self, Buddha's definition of found, right? Buddha's definition of anywhere, everything. Okay, okay, so you learn all of that. Then now you think, you contemplate, you reflect, and say, true or not true? Okay, well, yes, true. Seems true, not sure yet. So you should do that. You should think through. Then the third step in this threefold is to, it says to cultivate. The third step, to cultivate, or translated sometimes as to practice, and sometimes also translated as to meditate. But all these, of course, are related. What these English words we use for this third. That means now, no more intellectually thinking, and no more like needing to go, wait, suffering. What is the definition of suffering? Wait, what's the definition of self? Wait, what is the definition of not self? Yeah. So now here, right, then you start, right, to practice or to meditate, right, or to cultivate. What are you cultivating now? Well, depends, right? If the teaching is about there is not self, right, then instructions are given. First step, stable the mind. The mind stables, not so distracted. Then look at the mind. What is this mind? Is this mind stable? Is this mind always the way it is? No, the mind flickers. Like a flame, it flickers, right? Sometimes moving, sometimes still, sometimes bright, sometimes light. Then you watch. And in all of that flickering, right? Is there a permanent element that can be found? So that's to cultivate. That's to meditate. That's to practice. An example. Then it arises from there. So that's what Jesper is talking about. Here, my 4 steps is specifically zoomed into the context of like when you go to empowerments, what you should know, what should be present. First, recognize what's going on, understand what it means, experience it, then realization. Realization not so easy. So I'll give you an example what I mean here in this context to experience. Here what I mean is, right, in the text it says, okay, now, whatever color light from whatever place come from wherever and shoot into wherever, right? Right, this typical visualization, right? So usually all we're doing is at most, kind of recognizing, meaning, oh, okay, as in you understand those words. Okay, light from the guru in front, from the guru's heart. And here you're not really experiencing it. You're just rehearsing those words in your head. Okay, that, okay. which is, a necessary step, but not yet experiencing. And also in that sense, experiencing is also doesn't come so easily. Yeah? And experiencing sometimes comes very unexpectedly. But I want to say the unexpectedly is not accidentally. It's because of the power of your practice. Then suddenly you will experience, in other words, you will feel that, in fact, that light is coming into your heart or your throat or wherever. That's an experience. That's not realization yet. But on the basis of that experience, realization can arise. Other questions or comments?
I have a comment. We have to use our imaginations more. I think in our current culture, we're encouraged not to exercise our own imagination.
Yes.
But in the visualizations, we have to habituate ourselves to better and better visualizations. And then what happens when we get habituated to these imaginations, which are just as real as anything else, that's how the thing becomes realized. Yeah.
Correct. And our habituating of this imagination needs to be at least as strong as the way we imagine our problems. Actually, we do that all the time. We imagine our problems. I'm not denying, that some of us are facing problems of this or that sort. Yeah, a health problem, a finance problem. Yes, but the actual problem itself is usually not the only thing, right? We're experiencing. There are layers and layers of imaginations going on there. So our imagination in this kind of deity practice, Samadhi empowerment, needs to be at least as strong and convincing as the way we imagine our problems. The way we imagine someone liking us or not liking us. Oh, that's a powerful one. The way we imagine, what other people think of us. Our visualization, our imagination during these practices have to be at least as strong as that. If it is not at least as strong as that yet, keep working on it, because until it is as strong as that, it cannot counteract. So sometimes it's said, you use one kind of imagination to overcome another kind of imagination. You use an illusory Buddha to dispel an illusory confusion. So on page 2, it says, sit on a comfortable seat, then begin with generating bodhicitta, right? So that's like the most concise way of expressing what this bodhicitta is. So that all mother sentient beings, without limit, so limitless as the sky, limitless as space, in fact. Namka means sky. It also means space. So maybe better to change this to limitless as space. Have happiness. That is love, maitri. be free from suffering. That's karuna. And achieve the state of Buddha. That's bodhicitta. And then together, these three is what we mean when we say relative bodhicitta. Love and compassion, and wishing that they achieve the state of Buddha. So then for this purpose, I shall now meditate on the yoga of the 4 empowerments. So we need to begin with bodhicitta. In this samadhi of the samadhi empowerment, what's known as the 5-fold Mahamudra is also present. The 5-fold Mahamudra is talking about the way to practice Mahamudra with 5 elements. The first of the 5 elements is bodhicitta. And so this is the bodhicitta element. So even though we say this at the beginning, it doesn't mean, okay, now we're done with bodhicitta, we'll go to the next. But no, bodhicitta is always present. So these 5, they're always present. That's why it's called 5-fold or 5 limbs. You cannot cut off one limb because you say, I'm done with the left hand, so now I don't need it. Right? So they're called limbs, parts. You need all 5 parts, right? Then the next part of the 5 is meditate on your own body as idam. So on page 3, oneself appears clearly as the idam. That's the second of the 5-fold Mahamudra. 5-fold Mahamudra is the Drigungkagyu main way of practicing Mahamudra. Is known as the 5-fold Mahamudra. Nga den in Tibetan. Nga is 5, den is like parts. So the 5 part or the 5 elements or the 5 factors of Mahamudra. So the second factor is you have to meditate on yourself as idam. Then the third is you have to meditate on the guru, on the crown of your head. Usually it's said that. But it doesn't need to be literally on the crown of your head, sometimes in the center of your heart. But this is basically to cultivate devotion to the guru. And so here in this text it says, fingers away from the point between one's eyebrows. So between one's eyebrow is here, yeah? This spot. So extending out from this spot, fingers away. So however number of fingers. In one when Gachen Rinpoche taught this, he says 4 fingers. So not that far away. So if you visualize the guru 4 fingers out from here, then it will be small, Although it doesn't have to be small, it can be huge, but I think for us it's hard to imagine the guru like right 4 inches in front of 4 fingers in front and very big, So maybe it's small. But in Kyopa's text, it just says fingers away. Here, I would say you experiment, whether guru is big or small, literally 4 fingers away, or even fingers away, or feet away. You experiment, You should experiment because you have to start where it works for you. So then the description of the guru. Page 3, description of the guru. Guru in the form of Heruka, another name for Chakasamvara. The male of the male of the pair. is Heruka, and the female is Vajavarahi. So they are united in union in the space in front. And from them, your guru, you're going to receive the 4 empowerments. So the actual receiving of the 4 empowerments, starting with the first empowerment, this is on page 5, at the bottom of page 5, and then 6, then 7, and to the top of 8. That is then related to, part of this is the Guru Yoga practice, the third of the Fivefold Path. The result of receiving the 4 empowerments, at the end of that, you meditate on the natural state Mahamudra, the 4th of the 5 parts. And then at the end, on page 8, through this virtue may I and all migratory beings, that's the 5th part, dedication. So in this way, in this Samadhi empowerment text, the 5-fold Mahamudra is also, it's all crystallized into this one short practice. Now, your questions, your clarification before.
I have one question, basic question. What does Mahamudra mean?
Mahamudra is the great seal. Mahamudra, there's many ways to talk about Mahamudra. Here, Mahamudra refers to the natural state, but it's also a practice. It's considered the direct means of realizing Buddha. It's the highest kind of practice, especially in the Gagyu system. We say Mahamudra. In the Nyingma system, they use a different system called Dzogchen, which is Mahaati in Sanskrit. Dzogchen. In the Gagyu system, we call it Mahamudra. So Mahamudra both refers to the final result of being Buddha. So we say achieve Mahamudra. Then Mahamudra also means the path to achieve that. So the path to achieve that, the method to achieve that. Then that is basically the style of practicing that comes down to us from Tilopa, Naropa, Marpa, Milarepa, Gampopa, and particularly for us, Gampopa. Gampopa brought together explicitly tantric Vajrayana style of practice, and Gampopa combined it with more sutra style. These two put together. Then Gampopa has his own way of teaching. Everybody will talk about Mahamudra. Gelugpa will talk about Mahamudra. Sakyapa lineage will talk about Mahamudra. Kadampa lineage will talk about Mahamudra. How they teach Mahamudra, there are, important differences. So, not necessary to go, which is better. You just have to find where is your karmic connection. So, in the Gagyu Mahamudra, there is a particular flavor to it. So then, that is the path Mahamudra. Then there is what's known as the ground or basis Mahamudra. So this is another 3 things. Often you see what's called the ground or the path. The ground or the basis. Then the path, then the result. Result Mahamudra is the state of Buddha. Path Mahamudra is the method of practicing in order to reach the fruit, the result. Then there is basis or ground. So basis of practicing this. What is the basis of practicing this Mahamudra? The basis is the fact that we are fundamentally, we are primordially, we are innately Buddhist. That's ground Mahamudra. Ground Mahamudra, path Mahamudra, fruit Mahamudra.
Gracias.
Yeah. Others? Anything before we move on?
Visualizing as yidam.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have to have one yidam, do we? Or we can have. I'm sort of wondering what the qualifying yidams are. I mean,
all the usual suspects.
All the usual suspects.
Yeah. Don't make one up yourself.
Okay.
And it's good to stabilize, right? Part of this is to dispel distractions. So try not to, Monday this, Wednesday that, Friday that. So you say, I don't know what my yidam is. I don't know which one is my yidam, right?
It's whatever you feel a connection to, whatever.
Yeah, that you most powerfully would turn to when you think, whether you're in the moments of danger or moments of elation or moments of taking refuge, whatever image I think that you turn to, whichever of the Buddhas that you just think of, that's a good hint.
Okay.
Probably what you can think most easily that you want to embody. Yeah. In other words, which of the Buddhist superheroes do you think of? Right? All these idams are like, Marvel superheroes. So which superhero do you think of, in times of trouble? Then being that this is not a theistic tradition, it's good that you think of a particular superhero, but now you say, I want to be like that superhero. You want to embody. So that's idam. But don't think of, Superman and say, oh, that's my idam. So here, yes, oneself appears clearly as the idam. So whoever that you most naturally think of. Yeah. So sometimes also, who you think of and what you practice, sometimes there's a little difference also. So I just want to show, sometimes again, we naively think or we simplistically think that when someone says, my idam is this, then you would think that they exclusively, right, practice that. Okay, now I'm going to sound like I'm contradicting what I just said to Larry, that you should try to stabilize to one. But it's actually not a contradiction. I just want to show you the importance of context when we talk about idam. Yeah. So I'll use one example because it's the most commonly you can go listen to Rinpoche teaching, because there's so much of his teachings online, and you can see if what I'm saying is what my analysis is accurate or not. Again and again, you'll hear Kyabje Gachen Rinpoche saying, his yidam is Tara. His yidam is Tara. And particularly white Tara. And so he talks about how Tara saved him, like literally saved him 8 times in his life. 8 times that he almost died, but Tara intervened. Yeah. So he said, Tara is his idam. He will say, think of Tara, pray to Tara. Yeah. But Gachen Rinpoche is famous for also promoting the practice of Yamantaka, which is a form of Manjushri very wrathful, 3 heads, 6 hands. And this 10-day retreat that Gachin Rinpoche would lead around the world, he goes to lead these 10-day Yamantaka retreat, where everybody basically have to sleep in one's big room. And for 10 days, you are on, like daytime, everybody is up doing the practice. Nighttime is divided into 3 parts of the night. So at the first night, you are group A, group B, group C, right? So these are called group Chin. So maybe the first night, group A takes first shift. Then second night, group A takes second shift. That's the toughest one because you're interrupting your nighttime sleep, by waking in the middle shift. Then third night, group A takes third shift. So it cycles like that. Very intense practice. Everybody has to be in the same space, and you cannot see the sun during these 10 days for Yamantaka. So windows all have to be sealed so that no sunlight is seen. So Gachin Rinpoche goes around doing these 10-day Yamantaka. Then, something to look forward to within this year, a book is going to come out from Shambhala Publications, where Gachin Rinpoche's collected teachings on Vajrakilaya, another wrathful deity, is going to be published. So he's also, right, sort of an expert in Vajrakilaya, not sort of, an expert in Vajrakilaya. So then you say, wait, so which one is Rinpoche's idam? I would say, Rinpoche will say, all deities have the same quality. But what you can understand from this is, on the heart level, on the feeling level, the idam is Tara for Rinpoche. But on the technical level, see, in the Tara practices, on the technical level, there is not a lot of details. Tara practice tends to be more simple and more heart-based. Whereas Vajrakilaya, Yamantaka, or Chakasamvara, Vajavarahi, Hevajra, these deities and the practices related to them have a lot of technical details for you to develop different aspects and to purify different afflictive emotions and to develop different qualities. And that's why they're so detailed, and that's why they're so long also. And so there's also yidam in these 2 senses. For this samadhi empowerment, I would say you need to use the yidam that there's a heartfelt. And sometimes the heartfelt and the technically sophisticated yidam and the heartfelt yidam is the same. Like Vajrakilaya, or Now, of course, you step one step further back, they are the same. It's just because what are yidams? It's the embodiment of the Buddha state. Is this somewhat clear? So it's saying it's good to remain focused, but don't be stubborn. So it's good to be focused. It's good to not be so distracted. It's good if you naturally feel medicine Buddha, naturally feel, Tara, naturally feel Buddha Shakyamuni. Good. But don't be stubborn either, right? Especially if your guru says, okay, now you train in Vajakilaya, or you train in Chakasamvara, or you train in Vajavarahi, then know and understand that. You're not substituting one with another. But in the Vajakilaya practice, in the Chakasamvara practice, there are more sophisticated techniques found in those teachings, in those practices that you have to develop now. But it doesn't mean you're given up on Tara. I'm sure, like for Rinpoche, even when he's doing Yamantaka, it's fueled by his devotion to the form, the deity Tara. I believe that. So this emotional connection is important. So for this Samadhi empowerment, that should be the idam. Other questions? No? Okay. Now, empowerment. What is empowerment? What is empowerment? There are several words in Sanskrit used interchangeably that we translate into English as empowerment. Actually, the English word empowerment is derived from the Tibetan word wangkur. And wang is related to power. So it's a particular Tibetan translation, a particular Tibetan choice for how to translate the original Sanskrit. The original Sanskrit is abhisheka, abhikensa, abhichantu. So there are all several words. Abhisheka is the most common. With abhisheka or abhikensa, the etymology given for that word, there are two parts to it. First part is to scatter. Here, scatter doesn't mean to distribute. Here, scatter means like to remove, to kind of blast it off, to scatter it. Like, scatter, go away. One part is that. The second part is to fill. So this is referring to how abhisheka is a process of removing, right? And so removing what? If you have to guess, you should be able to make educated guesses now. To remove what? Somebody.
Obscurations.
Obscurations, yeah. Negative karma, yeah. Habitual, negative habits, all of that, yeah. Remove that. And then here to add, to pour in, is then to pour in, right, the blessings coming from the Buddhas, coming from the Guru. So each of the 4 empowerments will involve a specific kind of adding. Ultimately, nothing is being added. So when we say adding, there's a footnote there. Ultimately, nothing is being added. But relatively, of course, there are comings and goings, adding and subtracting. So you could say, you know, abhisheka means to subtract and to add. To subtract that which blocks, to subtract that which blocks our Buddha state. To add that which helps uncover the Buddha state. That's abhisheka. That's the etymology. Then abhisheka in ancient India was used, is the ritual rather, that is used in the coronation of a king. So it's a kingly ritual in ancient India. How do you make a king a king? Among other things, I'm sure there are other things you also need, but among other things, to make a king, let's talk about that. If you have to imagine in ancient India, how do you make a king a king? First thing that is necessary is what? The candidate has to be what?
The lineage. You said us with the Parnashabari retreat that when we receive the empowerment, we have to have the lineage.
Lineage. Okay, so in this case, let's say the king. How do you make the candidate a king? What is necessary? The person that is going to be made into a king. First, the person needs to be what?
Prince.
Prince, yes. I mean, we can agree or disagree with this archaic way of making leaders, but that's the understanding, right? He has to be the legitimate heir of the last king, right? So symbolically, what it means here is we have to have the Buddha stuff in order to become Buddha. Luckily, we know we all have the Buddha stuff. And for that matter, whether you are an heir to a king, or you are an heir to a slave, or you are an heir to a lawyer, or you are an heir to a robber, or you are an heir to a cow, or you are an heir, right, to a monkey. We all have the Buddha stuff. So in that sense, we qualify. Yeah. Then, once that's clear, then the ceremony can proceed. So in that ceremony, they do use these vases. They do use these bumpa. And of course, to make a king, you know, this is probably made from gold and water collected from all the holy rivers. And then the priests will be chanting and praying for days, preparing the water. Then finally, this water is poured onto the king. And in that way, the king becomes king. So Vajrayana and Abhisheka rituals are partly designed to resonate with ancient Indians thinking of how a king is being made. So in that sense, that's where the word empowerment comes from. It's like coronation, giving power. But of course, in this context, we understand that that power has always been there. As in, the candidate, the crown prince, has the stuff of kings. In our case, Buddha, the Buddha stuff. We are of the Buddha family. And so then we can be the proper heirs and heiresses of Buddha. So then specifically, there are 4 empowerments. So you might want to write this down, but it's also in this text. There are 4 empowerments that are received successively, as in one by one. You receive them one following the other. The first one, starting at the bottom of page 5 to the bottom of page 6, it says the vase empowerment, or the vase empowerment. The vase empowerment or the vase empowerment. British or English. The second empowerment is known as the secret empowerment. At the bottom of page 6, towards the bottom, secret empowerment. The third empowerment on page 7, here it's called the third empowerment, but the more usual technical term, it's called the wisdom knowledge empowerment. The wisdom knowledge empowerment. Then finally, the fourth empowerment on page 8, at the top, it says the fourth empowerment. So that is the name for the fourth empowerment. Sometimes the fourth empowerment is also called the word empowerment. Word empowerment. Siki wang in Tibetan. Sik, words. The word empowerment. Also called the fourth empowerment. So these are the 4 successive empowerments that one should receive in order to fully practice Vajrayana. You should receive these 4 empowerments. These 4 empowerments, when you receive them, you often receive them from within the context of a particular deity, such as, Avalokiteshvara or Tara or, Jakasamvara, Vajakilaya, Vajrayogini, so on and so forth. Like each of these deities, there are ritual traditions for giving empowerment according to these different deities. In a way, you can say, whatever the deity is not as important as, although it is an entryway, a doorway, but what this doorway takes you into is realizing the content of these 4 empowerments. That is actually most important. But instead, I think sometimes we get so carried away by, oh, this deity, that deity, this 4 arms, 6 arms, 2 arms, this color, that color, this and that, and this and that, and this and that. Actually, those are like doorways. You enter through this or that based on personal preference. But Vajravarahi's 4 empowerments and Jakasamvara's 4 empowerments and Yamantaka's 4 empowerments is identical. Doesn't matter which deity. It doesn't matter which doorway leads you into the room where you experience and realize the content. So most recently, probably for many of you, the most recent maybe empowerment you participated in, either Panashavari or if you were at the Dalai Lama giving the empowerment of Avalokiteshvara virtually. Those empowerments these four empowerments are not explicitly present. They are implicitly present. In fact, there are more technical divisions of these empowerments. So for example, the Panashavari, the more technical definition of that type of empowerment, they are called JUN. JUN means permission blessings. They are like an authorization ritual for you to practice a particular deity. Of course, that authorization ritual for you to practice that particular deity assumes that the four empowerments is already there. So the four empowerments forms the background to the JUN. Then in the Dalai Lama's Avalokiteshvara empowerment, explicitly present is the first of the four empowerments, the vase or the vase empowerment. Explicitly present is that first of the four empowerments. Implicitly, of course, the other three kind of are in the background. But what's explicitly identified there is the vase empowerment. Then you can say in the Panashavari, the vase is also kind of more explicit, which is the first of the four empowerments. Now, superficially, these four empowerments are a level of like more and more refined and more profound. Because the vase empowerment is related to the purification of body, the secret empowerment to speech, the wisdom knowledge empowerment to mind, and the fourth empowerment to the purification of the most subtle obscurations of all body, speech, and mind. So vase, secret empowerment, wisdom knowledge empowerment, it remove the grosser obscurations of body, speech, and mind. The fourth empowerment completely dispels the most subtle of any and all obscurations. So from that perspective, the four empowerments, the vase is the most preliminary, and then the word is the most important, right? But in the Gongchik Kyoba Rinpoche will say, of the four, the vase is the most important. Surprise, surprise. Or not, right? Not surprise. Kyoba Rinpoche is always going back to how the foundation, the preliminary, is the most important. So he says, yes, of course, you can say secret empowerment, wisdom, knowledge empowerment, and finally word empowerment, they are more profound than the first empowerment. But he says, without successfully receiving the first empowerment, you have no basis for the other three empowerments to arise, to take effect. So he makes a division. He says, vase empowerment overall as the foundation for the other three, that's the most important, the vase empowerment. Then he says of those three, right, the other three, if you have to say which is more important, then he says the fourth, the word, is the most important. In other words, right, summary, if you talk about the four, which is most important, for Kyoba Rinpoche, most important is often the label of most important is often based on, right? What is the standard for saying, oh, this is most important or this is less important? The standard is always based on the side of who needs to be trained, right? So from the side of who needs to be trained, which is us, then of course the vase is the most important, because if we don't get that, we're not going to get any of the other ones. Then you can say, you know, for Buddhas, which is the most important empowerment, then you can say, oh, it's the word empowerment, the fourth one. Yeah, for Buddhas, you know. But we're nowhere close to being Buddhas. So you don't need to go worry and fuss about the fourth empowerment. You stay at the base empowerment and focus on that. If you succeed, whatever degree that you succeed in receiving the first of the four empowerments, then the other three will take care of themselves. They're easy after that. Let's take a quick break so that you can stretch and not be so distracted by painful legs or back. And then we will continue. So today, no explicitly Gongchik, but these four empowerments is important. If we are going to do this practice right, we have to understand the four empowerments very, very clearly. First, recognize what is going on, then understand what is going on. You know, then if we have those two, then maybe we will have a chance when we start applying them to experience what is going on and then to realize. Yeah. So let's take a short break.